With recent Super Bowl commercials revealing the look of Stitch as the next edition of Curses of Disney remakes, it felt right to make a video on the subject of Lilo and Stitch the remake based on the criteria I've laid out in a previous video, and specifically my Lion King remake video. As much as you may think that I am anti-remake from the consensus of that video, I actually do think there are good reasons to make a Disney remake. Disney just has yet to truly hit that note successfully, which leads me to be very fearful of what they will do to one of my favorite fictional IPs ever created. I am a Disney adult, admittedly. My family has been to Disney an uncountable amount of times on family vacations, where my priority in merchandise purchasing, if you have not been able to tell, is Stitch related. I have these Stitch gloves and ears and an uncountable amount of shirts and memorabilia all across the board, and therefore I think I am rather qualified in my critique of Lilo and Stitch, if you will. I dressed for the job. I am not a Stitch fan, I am the Stitch fan. So when I tell you the remake means a lot to me, but also nothing at all, I mean it. This remake will be introducing the character that I have known for literally my entire life. The original Lilo and Stitch premiered literal days before I was born, and I have loved the entire time to an entire new set of people and children, and I mean it when I say this character and IP mean a lot to me. So, with my credentials being set, let's discuss what it will take to make this remake good. As I said, parts of this video will be a rehashing video I already made, but I will be restating what, in my opinion, personally can make a good remake, that is. These reasons start off with the correcting previous wrongs of the previous IP. Take Dumbo, for example, a movie that has some horrendous stereotype black characters that are entirely removed in its remakes, to my knowledge, as a method to make amends of the previous wrongs of those characters and atrocities. To my current understanding, I am not aware of any horrendous or outlandish or outstanding issues with the original Lilo and Stitch, but I also won't say that there aren't aspects that can be built upon culturally. Hawaii is an often commodified culture that panders to tourists, and it is important to further give people proper representation and really be culturally sensitive to a group of people that has such a long, rich history of being extorted and taken advantage of by American culture and consumerism as a whole. My second example of there being a good reason to make a remake is to further build upon the already established plot and or world within the IP. This can both add to characters as well as add to the story of the series, and in Lilo and Stitch's cases, there truly is a lot of room for building. With the aliens having very little known to the viewer, to Lilo's family, there are lots little parts of the movies in which you could choose to build upon, which admittedly could come off as unnecessary depending on the way you go about it, but there definitely are aspects of the world that can be built up upon. Then there's my final reason of what makes a good remake, which does the story need to be reintroduced to a new generation? Short answer, yes. Long answer, well, I think this is one of the best times to introduce the core themes and elements of Lilo and Stitch, probably ever could be. I will go more in depth in this video, but Lilo and Stitch has such a heavy emphasis on found family, the system separating families, cultural insensitivities, and love will triumph overall, most importantly. Lilo and Stitch was a non-traditional movie for its time. There is no overarching love story integral to the plot. It was not dependent on heteronormativity or American cultural standards, like, at all. It was its own beautiful lightning in a bottle. It was about broken family trying to piece itself back together in a world that won't let it. Despite all the odds being against our core characters from the moment the movie started to the moment the movie ended. And it's something that could be helpful to so many people right now. So regardless, at the bare minimum, for those who see this video, let this be your excuse to rewatch or maybe see Lilo and Stitch for the first time. It's a movie that speaks volumes, and I'm not ashamed to admit that I cried multiple times during my most recent rewatch. It's just a good film, and you should watch it again. I want to discuss what makes Lilo and Stitch so special and even magical for even Disney standards. Therefore, I plan to include all the musts that need inclusion in the remake. I will say some of this may come off as nitpicking, and some will come off as integral, but either way, I do believe all parts mentioned in this part of the video must have some sort of substantial inclusion in the remake, otherwise, why even remake the movie? First, let's talk about CGI and animation as a whole. Now, if you've seen my Lion King video, you know my opinion on the live action from cartoon pipeline in which we're seeing recently. In my synopsis, quickly, not a fan of it. Animation should stay as animation. I don't need to see a realistic lion have human emotions. That doesn't look right. I would rather a fake lion have fake emotions. Well, I guess no real emotions, but either way. This will hopefully be the shortest and most blunt part of all of the categories in which I wish to discuss. Lilo and Stitch will receive way more leeway, specifically in this department, than The Lion King did, due to, at the end of the day, there are humans at the focal point of the story, and humans can always act as humans. It's shockingly doable for a human to act like a human, even if its reference is originally animated. So I have faith that the actors who play the roles of humans can do their roles justice, as long as they are Hawaiian is my one caveat, and they all should be Hawaiian actors. Let's once again remember, this movie needs to be faithful culturally as well as to the actual movie's remake, which, to my understanding, the original movie is faithful culturally. But I can't help but be concerned about what the animation could be with all of the many aliens that do show up in this movie. Disney's previous attempt at live-action animation has fallen absolutely flat on its face with some of the worst animation known to man, which is obscene because I'm sure some of the most talented animators were hired for those productions, but there is so much you can do with realistic animation. The many aliens in the films, including Stitch, are meant to be animated, and they're meant to be out there characters who have so much going on for them. They aren't meant to be some realistic depictions of aliens like Alien vs. Predator or the Alien films, if you will. Just like the lions in The Lion King were never meant to be real lions. These characters need to have expression and emotion behind them. And to be very clear, I never blame the animators on this front at all, ever. And rather, it's the medium. To be realistic can mean to be devoid of emotion. In moments of emotion, human actors can convey so much, but for animation, the sky is the literal limit. And to be cemented in realism condemns the animators to being boring animation or creating boring animation. I am open and want to be proven wrong on this, but I have yet to be proven wrong on this thesis. Next thing that is integral to Lilo and Stitch is the culture. The original Lilo and Stitch is riddled with subtle and not so subtle Hawaiian culture, which I think could certainly be expanded upon and even given more of a center point. Hawaii has such beautiful culture, and as someone who has been there once, there is potentially me outing myself as being a part of the problem. I cannot express the beauty of Hawaii and how awful it is that it is often treated as a small getaway when there is such a rich culture that could take a lifetime to truly explore and understand. That can further be built upon in this remake if the writers choose so, but there is something that is so integral to the plot of Lilo and Stitch, and that is the commentary of the commodification of Hawaii, which is super important. If you didn't already know, there are many times in Lilo and Stitch where instead of the culture being the butt of the joke, like we've seen in so many films before, rather it's the people who take advantage of the culture and commodify it who are the actual butt of the joke. From Lilo taking pictures of tourists as a method of expressing her discomfort of her home being turned into a place to take pretty photos rather than being given the respect it deserves, many tourists are tortured by Stitch's antics, and even the ice cream gag that constantly happens. This is a cultural critique of the treatment of Hawaii, and it is important to the source material and to being honest to Hawaii. There is limited dialogue dedicated to it, but the movie spends a well amount of established time on how important tourism is to the culture and survival of Hawaii, and how awful that is for the culture, but necessary it is for the survival of the people. Something that is often overlooked when it comes to Hawaii is these very nuanced conversations where they're so delicately weaved into Lilo and Stitch. Even if the new rendition doesn't cover the subtleties the original did, the one iteration I need them to keep, like strictly need, like it is a must, is Lilo's hobby of taking photos of tourists. I believe this to be so important because it is such a small detail, but it's so integral to what Disney was and the love they used to put into these projects. Lilo's hobbies of taking photos of tourists is almost an act of rebellion. She treats these people who see her as a tourist attraction in the same vein and I cannot express how important that subtlety is. Lilo acts opposed to those who have seen her as some sort of animal meant to perform simply for being born in Hawaii, and then flips that narrative. The tourists are now the attraction, and although it is a small thing, it represents the resentment and rightful feelings people of Hawaii tend to have towards Americans who come and take their culture for granted. A culture that, once again, could take a lifetime to study, and many treat it as some quick fun moment when there are people who live those lives you think are just a fun activity for the family vacation. And that's an important thing to remember and have in this film. These are real people, real lives, and a real culture that is rich. When you make a film about Ainori, it's important that you include those people, and they're not the expense of the film, but rather the point of the film. Something they have done well with the original Lilo and Stitch, at least to my knowledge, because obviously I'm not Hawaiian, but also something that could be important for our current climate to hear. With the recent anti-DEI legislations and movements, it's important to remember why diversity is important. It's not for brownie points. It's because these are real people with real life experiences. If the movie is meant to take place and center minorities, it's Disney's job to do those minorities right, as they are real people with real lived experience that needs to be reflected on screen properly. Then we have the themes of Lilo and Stitch, which, as I said, there are many, but there are two important themes I need this remake to do right. The first one is a broken family. Now, transparency, I don't have a super close sentimental connection to this theme. I have a loving family with two parents who are together who support me in all my endeavors. Yet, that's why Lilo and Stitch's broken family feels so important to mention, because I know my experience is not everyone's. I know how important it is for children to know that non-traditional families can and will work. The broken family of Lilo and Stitch is a truth to so many people, and those people may not be the majority, but it is a reality that we who don't live it need to see, so those who do live it deserve to see. There is no correct or wrong way to be a family as long as love comes out on top. It's broken, but it's good. It's not ideal, but it will do its job, and that's important to remember. Once again, I bring up our current climate and our current time. Families are actively being separated, and by no means am I the right person to be saying this, but frankly, I have been less hopeful than ever in recent years, but that doesn't mean I can't still have hope. I hope it will work out. I hope that love will find a way, and I hope for those who are in worse places than me that things get better. I truly think Lilo and Stitch, if done right, can further push this hope, and I think that as long as they can somewhat keep to the source, if not build up upon that source, it can make a beautiful message for such a terrible time right now. Because now more than ever, we need that hope that it can work out in spite of our situations, in spite of our circumstances, in spite of our government, and in spite of those who voted against your right. We need that hope to believe in. We need to hold out hope, even if it seems that that is impossible. And I truly believe that there is a small role this film can play in that hope. There is no perfect family. There never has been. What there is people who love each other no matter the conditions, and as long as that message is spread, I am happy. Our next theme that I think is so important, which I feel much more knowledgeable about, found family. Found family is integral to the story of Lilo and Stitch, and it plays more into Stitch's place in the story, where Lilo represents a broken family and how no matter the cost, love will make it work. Stitch represents coming from nothing and finding a family of your own. Stitch is quite literally a creature designed by a scientist to do nothing but destroy, cause chaos. But when he is met with an island in which there is little to destroy, he is aimless. He has no goals or ideals or purpose, something I'm sure many of us can relate to in our current time. Stitch goes from someone dedicated to destruction and to destroying everything around him to someone who has nothing. He realizes he destroys everything around him and how that leaves him with nothing in the end, something I myself and I'm sure many can relate to. Stitch doesn't mean to cause all this chaos and drama, and rather it is how he is designed. It's not until he almost loses everything and everything is almost lost that he realizes he needs to change. He makes that change addressing the issue that he is the problem. Stitch represents that at our core, it's not always our fault for being destructive, but it is our responsibility. He is built to destroy, but through hard work and determination, he knows that he can be more. I think now more than ever, we could use more messaging like that. The point of Lilo and Stitch is that non-traditional families are just as important as traditional families. Neither is more important than the other, and if you take anything away from this video, I hope it's that. Family is what matters, no matter what or which way you have obtained that family. You are not a destructive monster, and you are not alone. You will find people who you will call family. For some, it will take time. For some, they're right in front of you and you don't see them. Either way, whether you call your family those who you share a blood bond with or those who you met through life, they are your family. You may be an ugly duckling to some, but to others you are a beautiful swan. Lilo and Stitch is a generational film for what it represents. It broke so many norms even for Disney standards, and I love it for that to this day. I am fearful of this remake and the potential shortcomings, but I dare to hope that maybe it can be good. I don't just dare to hope for this for myself, but for those this film could really touch and help in such dark times. I truly do believe a reintroduction of this film to a new generation could be such a beautiful thing, and a story such as Lilo and Stitch can and will be important to be seen in times that we are currently in. So I'll be damned if I let it fall flat on its face. All I can say is that I hope Disney has learned from their previous failures and chooses to grow, and even if they don't, I will still be here. The original Lilo and Stitch will still be here. We will still be here. We may not have a lot of power, but I promise we have more than you think. So watch the original Lilo and Stitch, not in spite of the new one, but rather in hope that it can live up to the legacy and proof of the original. I have been Enigma, and goodbye.